Harvey, what day is today?
Today is Monday, November 15, 2021, corresponding to the 12th of Kislev, 5782.
Oh, we're 2 weeks away from Hanukkah. Okay, so if you saw my email where I said that I'm going to sell you something, but it's going to be free, and I intentionally left it vague. I wasn't sure whether it was better to tell you what it's about, or I try always in my email to make it, something interesting. So I'm not selling lemonade tonight. That I can tell you. So I what I want to talk about is Mayim Acharonim. We did 2 shiurim on Mayim Acharonim, so I didn't want to bore you and tell you I'm doing another shiur. But you'll see, I'm not doing a boring dimension of Mayim Acharonim. But what I want to sell to you is the following: a person, as one goes through life, a person should always seek to grow and constantly reach a higher level. So there's different ways to grow. One is to improve one's midos and one's character. And the Vilna Gaon says in the Even Shlema that if a person doesn't work on his midos, lama lo chayim, what does he have to be alive for? That's how fundamental it is. But it also there's religious growth in terms of our relationship to Kadosh Baruch Hu, and then there's growth in terms of being medaktik b'mitzvos. And as a person gets older, you there's always things that you don't know. I mean, I'm constantly learning things that I didn't know, that haven't been doing. And then when you find them out, you should incorporate them in your mitzvah observance. So I think with Mayim Acharonim, this is a terrific opportunity. Most people are not makbid on Mayim Acharonim. I didn't take a survey, but I think certainly a fair amount of people are not makbid. So if you're in the category of those that are makbid, so kol hakavod. But if you're not, so what I'm selling to you is an opportunity. It takes a second to wash Mayim Acharonim, and we don't eat bread that often anyway. So it's a few times a week you'll wash Mayim Acharonim. It's a way of enhancing your mitzvah observance. And so what I want to show you is the compelling reason to be medaktik on Mayim Acharonim, because just to tell you, you should do it. When my kids were growing up, I didn't let them take on chumras that they didn't understand. Like, I wear woolen tzitzis, and they wanted to wear woolen tzitzis. I said, when you're older, you'll understand why you should wear woolen tzitzis. Then you could wear. I didn't tell them they should wear the tzitzis out, because why you just to follow the copycat. You have to know what you're doing. So I want you to be able to understand why this is a compelling issue that you should do Mayim Acharonim. So if you recall, the Shulchan Aruch, the Tosas in a number of places, in Chulin and in Brachos, Tosas says, the Gemara says Mayim Acharonim is a chova. It's obligatory. The Gemara has 2 reasons. One is because of melech sedomis, because of the salt will get into your eyes and cause blindness. And the other reason is because it says, the Pasuk says, V'skadashtem yisem kedoshim, you're supposed to sanctify yourself. And the Gemara interprets that to mean you wash your hands before you eat. And when you finish eating, you shouldn't be benching with dirty hands. It's a lack of kavod. So therefore, you're sanctifying yourself by washing your hands. The Rambam brings the primary. The Rambam doesn't bring the reason v'skadashtem, I don't think. Rambam says the reason is because of melech sedomis. Tosas says that there's no more mitzvah because we don't have melech sedomis anymore. The Rambam says that it's melech sedomis or other types of salt that have the same properties as melech sedomis. So according to the Rambam, the chashash of melech sedomis is still present. So how does the Shulchan Aruch paskin this machlokas, the Rambam and Tosas? How does the Shulchan Aruch paskin? So the Shulchan Aruch in the top of the page, in the beginning of Siman Kuf Pei Aleph, the Shulchan Aruch says Mayim Acharonim chova. It makes a blanket statement that it's an obligation. Then, when you get to the very end of the Siman, this is the same Siman, the end of Kuf Pei Aleph. So in the next paragraph, the Shulchan Aruch says, Yeshei nogim lito Mayim Acharonim. There's some people that don't wash Mayim Acharonim. So the Mishnah Berurah in the underneath where it's underlined says, She'ein nogim mibnei she'ein melech sedomas matzi b'neinu, because we don't have sedomas salt. Umishum yadayim mezumos ein choshishim, and the issue that the hands should be clean, we're not concerned about that, because achshem ein makbidon l'rachetz miluchol chamaychol ein zakari zu amalon. Because nowadays people don't care so much that they're not as finicky as they used to be in the olden days, which is surprising. You would think that today people are more mefunicky.
Well, that's
But
what Tosfos says. I think that's almost directly what Tosfos
Tosa says that, correct.
So in those days, I could see they weren't. That was a long time ago.
Well, we don't know what it was, but obviously that's what Tosa says. In those days, they were, and Tosa says a little bit more. Tosa says in those days they used to put oil on their hands. After they washed their hands, they put on oil, and that was the completion of the process. And we don't put oil on our hands. Okay, that's the Mishnah Berurah says. That's the Shulchan Aruch. V'das hagra bebiuro the tzarich litol gam idna. So the Shulchan Aruch brings it's a machlokes. Some Acharonim say that since the Shulchan Aruch in the beginning of Kuf Pei Aleph just says Mayim Acharonim Chova, and then in the end he says Yesh Noyim, so the implication is that really Mikra Dini holds it it's Chova, because that's what he makes it as a blanket statement. Then afterwards he qualifies it, and he doesn't even qualify it right away. He qualifies it at the end of the Siman. So, but the Mishnah Berurah says, "V'dasa Rabbi v'yuro the tzarich litol gam ha'idna." The Gra holds that nowadays Mayim Acharonim is still a chova. The Tam Melch Sedomis Yadayim Zumos Gam Ata Shayich K'moshe Kosov B'Sif Alf, because the Vilna Gaon holds that we still have the concerns of Melch Sedomis, because it's not only Melch Sedomis but there's other salts as well. And the hand, even if we're not so mefuniki, we should still have clean hands. The Kakosov HaMagen Avram B'Shem HaMekubalim, and the Magen Avram says in the name of the Mekubalim that you should also wash Mayim Acharonim. The Chol Adam Yizar B'Mayim Acharonim. Everybody should be machmer. V'chein hichmer Marshal B'Yam Shlomo, and that's what the Marshal says in the Yam Shlomo. The Marshal was a contemporary of the Ramah, and he says that you should wash Mayim Acharonim. Kakosov Birki Yosef Ayin Sham Shehichmer Har Bebezeh. He was very machmer. So Mishnah Berurah lets us know that there's a slew of people or of poskim that say that you should wash Mayim Acharonim, in spite of the fact that the Shulchan Aruch says Yesh Ein Nogim. But you see that the Shulchan Aruch pretty much, the Mishnah Berurah is advocating that you should wash Mayim Acharonim. So let me learn with you some of the Makoros that the Mishnah Berurah quotes, and some other Makoros as well. First, the Magen Avram that he quotes, that the Magen Avram says in the name of the Mekubalim that everybody should wash Mayim Acharonim. So the Magen Avram is in the next paragraph on the left side. V'tzarich lito mashma v'tur the dafka hamavarach. The Tur is mashma only the person who's benching has to wash Mayim Acharonim, because the Tur holds that the reason is because of Yadayim Muzuamos, because your hands are not clean, and that only applies to the person who's reciting the bracha. U'mila mekubalim kasu the kol adam yizahir b'Mayim Acharonim. The Mekubalim say that everybody should wash Mayim Acharonim. The Kachos of Yam Shlomo shenog lishtov hakos rachas yad b'Mayim. And the Yam Shlomo said, that's the Marshal, says that he also was makbid to use Mayim Acharonim. And we're going to see that the Kabbalah issue is prominently represented. And I'll show you a bunch of places where it's represented. But that's the Magen Avram, who is the primary commentary on the Shulchan Aruch and Orach Chaim, is the Magen Avram. The Magen Avram leans in favor of that you should wash Mayim Acharonim because of Kabbalah, because of Mekubalim. It's very interesting, this idea that Mekubalim, you could write, and I probably there are people who've written Svarim on what role has Kabbalah played in Halacha. The Beis Yosef was a very big Mekubal. So interwoven into the Shulchan Aruch are many things that he got from Zohar and other Kabbalistic sources. And if you go in the Shulchan Aruch straight, you don't even know what's from the Mekubalim and not. But it's interwoven together. So the Magen Avram says that the Mekubalim say you should wash Mayim Acharonim. The Aruch HaShulchan on the bottom says. He says, the Aruch HaShulchan was together with the Mishnah Berurah. These were the two main poskim in the 20th century. So he says, Lo, I forgot what I wrote. He says, not only, according to some shitas, it's a chiyuv, but gam bisman hazeh, k'moshe v'yarno, even bisman hazeh. Now, afilu shitas hatosis, the leka chiyuv b'rchas hamazim, ain't safek shekasu kein k'dei lamet schus. He says Tosis only is trying to justify why people. He wants. It's a good midah to be melamed schus and try to explain why people are doing things. Not to consider them to be balei aver. But he said, "Gam Rabbeinu said, Atosis modim the tzarach gam berachas hamazon gam izman hazeh. The miyem hashemel sedom is ein motzi gam ata." And he says, Tosis says there's no more mayim mel sedomas. He says, who said that? How does Tosis? Tosis is saying maybe that's why people don't wash mayim acharonim. He can't make such a blanket statement because maybe it is matzli. And he says, "Really, the melach mimei hayam yeshem v'chash mel sedomas." And he says, if it's salt water, if it's salt that comes from salt water, sea salt, so there is certainly a chash of mel sedomas because all the water is mixed up. Very interesting. He says in those days they used to mine the salt. So if you mine the salt in Germany or France, you're not going to get melch sedomas. But if you're getting it from the ocean, so the oceans, everything mixes together.
Rabbi,
Yes.
A few weeks ago, we had where Tosfos knew that those snakes weren't found, and our answer at the time was, I think someone even asked, how does Tosfos know that? And I believe the Rabbi
said it's a svara.
Tosfos knows things. We don't know what he knows. But here, today, we're saying just the opposite. Maybe how does Tosfos know that Mel Sodom doesn't exist?
Tosfos said it. He says that there's no Mel Sedomas, but the Aruch Shulchan is saying that Tosfos says that as a possibility to Milamed Schus, but not that Tosfos holds that. In other words, privately, Tosfos, according to Aruch Shulchan, Tosfos also washed Mayim Acharonim because of Mel Sedomas, but he wants to find a justification for the people. So then that's why he says it as a possibility.
The shot of like Joseph would say there's no Mel Stones is because they didn't live anywhere near Sodom.
Right, that's true. That is correct.
But
right.
There are other salts that are different.
So the Rambam says it's Mel Sedomas and other salts that have the same properties. So of course,
some of that's what the Aruch
it
Shulchan
could be means that, or it could be he means that I saw somebody says it since the water gets all mixed up, so there could be traces of Mel Sedomas in our water. And then he says V'gam b'Zohar Pinchas Yisrael zeh. And the Zohar says that you should wash Mayim Acharonim. V'chol Mekubalim Hizir al Zeh. And the Mekubalim warned that you should wash Mayim Acharonim. Uv'Teshuvos min Shemayim. And then there's a sefer called Teshuvos min Shemayim, which I'm going to focus on a lot. There's one of the Balei Taisus wrote a sefer where he says that he had Sheeilos that were troubling him, and he would go to sleep. And while he was sleeping in a dream, the Rebbeinu Shalom revealed to him the answers to his questions, and then when he woke up, he recorded in his sefer. So he says in the Sheeilos Teshuvos min Shemayim, Mavur shekol meikav Mayim Acharonim mekilin lo mezonosav min Shemayim. If somebody is not careful with Mayim Acharonim, then God is not going to be careful to make sure that the person has food to eat. You should be extremely careful. V'kach nogim kol yirei Hashem. And that's what all people Yerei Shemayim do.
He's going to be keeping my phone from now on.
Well, that's what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm showing you. The Mishnah Berurah leans in favor of it. The Aruch Shulchan is very strong, and he says that all Yerei Hashem do it. The Magen Avraham says that the Mekubalim say you should do it. And then we're going to see the Sefer Teshuvos min Shemayim, who says that he had a dream and that he was told that if you don't wash Mayim Acharonim, it's not going to be good for your parnasa. Okay, on the next page, I wanted to show you the Vilna Gaon's position about Mayim Acharonim is recorded in the Shulchan Aruch. He has a commentary in the bottom of the Shulchan Aruch, but he also had a sefer called Ma'aser Rav. Alan, we're talking about whether I'm trying to convince everybody they should wash Mayim Acharonim. If they have not been doing it till now, they should start doing it now because most of the Parnasim, the poskim advocate strongly in favor of it. So the Ma'aser Rav, which is what the one of the Talmidim of the Vilna Gaon wrote the Ma'aser Rav. So he says Mayim Acharonim chova u'mitzvah k'mo Mayim Rishonim. It's just as much a chova and a mitzvah as Mayim Rishonim. And then at the bottom, I have something that's very interesting. The Vilna Gaon held that we're machmer for gilui b'zman hazeh, even though there's no snakes. In the next paragraph, gilui aser asher nechashim mitzuyim b'neinu V'hu zalhay and Nizar was Nizar mod bedavar. He was very, very careful to go not to drink bottles that were left overnight uncovered. So and then in the next paragraph it says, "Hu hayu omer kol ma she'osu Chazal o tiknu ezet Acharonim imnei ezet tam." Whenever Chazal offer a reason for a takana, af shebit batal hatam, even where the reason no longer applies. And you remember we had a long discussion about when do you say that it's a tam's batal, the takana is annulled, and when do you say that it's a davar shebeminyan, you need minyan acharatir. But even in those cases where if the tam is batal, really you shouldn't have to keep the din, and that's what the Rishonim say about Gilui, that since we don't have snakes in our country, so you don't have to be makban Gilui. But the Vilna Gaon said that after batal tam agoli gonu takanosim yisurim mikom. We only know the time that they revealed to us, but there's other reasons. They only revealed some of the time that were hidden with them. So therefore, one should not violate the reason that Chachamim give, even though the time is so the same thing is true with Mayim Acharonim, that even if you'll say that there's no more Mel Sodomis, but the Vilna Gaon, he felt, you see how strong he feels. He was very makbid, even on Gilui. So I'm not advocating that you should keep the Gilui, because that's most of the poskim not in agreement with the Vilna Gaon. But just showing you another position here that the Vilna Gaon, when it came to Mayim Acharonim, he was adamant that Mayim Acharonim is a chova. I once said this idea that the Vilna Gaon says that there could be multiple reasons for takanas of Chazal. So a good example is that we keep 2 days of Yantif in Chutz La'aretz. So ostensibly the Gemara says the reason is, the Gemara in Beis says because Minigav saying biyadenu, because in the time of the Beis Hamikdash when they were Mekadosh with Riyah, so then there were people who were far away, didn't know if there were 2 days or 1 day, because they didn't know which day, not 2 days or 1 day, they didn't know which day was Yantif. So therefore, and the Gemara says that we treat, even though now the Luach is fixed, Hillel, the hill of the ladder, not the first hill, but the later hill, it created a fixed calendar, so we know for sure that there's only which day is Yantif, but nonetheless, we follow the minig of Oseinu, we do the minig of our forefathers. And Gemara says, why? Because maybe there'll be a time when the Jewish people will be attacked, and there'll be some Eitzaros that they won't even know what the calendar is anymore. And therefore they won't know whether the month has 2 days Rosh Chodesh or 1 day Rosh Chodesh. So to address that's why we keep 2 days. That's what Gemara says. So, but there's a sefer Megala Amukos. I think I saw it in the quoted from Megala Amukos. He says that there's another reason why in Chutz La'aretz you keep 2 days, because in Chutz La'aretz it's harder to connect to the kedusha of Yantif. So you're in Golus, so you need 2 days. In Eretz Yisrael, the kedusha is on the stones. The Gemara says that Rav Ashi, when he came to Eretz Yisrael, he used to kiss the stones. So the kedusha is all over the place. But in Chutz La'aretz, it's much harder to find the kedusha. So therefore, he says that in Chutz La'aretz you keep. That's why you keep 2 days. A secondary reason. What do you want to say, Bissal? Oh, I thought you were.
I've heard that reason before, but I never knew that it was actually.
I think it's a Megal. There's the sefer we have Yantav Sheni Kilchaso from Rabbi Fried in Texas. I'm pretty sure that he quotes it from the Megal Amukos. The Megal Amukos was a big Mekubal. He lived. He was also contemporary of the Ramah around that period of time. I once said that when the first time that a marriage is consummated and there's tashmish, the woman becomes a nida because there's dam basulim, because even though really it's dam maka, so she shouldn't become a nida. But Chazal were gozer that it looks like that, like regular period, so therefore they were gozer that she should become a nida. So I said I think there's a secondary reason also, is because they didn't want that the whole week of Sheva Brachas, the entire focus of the chassan should be on having a physical relationship with his wife, because that is not the end all of marriage. Marriage is more than physical attraction. Physical attraction is a necessity, and it brings the couple closer together. But when it becomes all consuming, that's no good. So by the non-Jews, when they go on a honeymoon, that's probably that's a major focus of the honeymoon. But in a Jewish marriage, the chas and kala are able to be together the night of the chasana if they're able to consummate the marriage then, and then she's a nida for the next 2 weeks. So what that does is it trains the husband how to express feeling without being physical. That was my theory. Anyway, so that's what the Gra says. Now if you turn to the next page, the Kaf HaChaim, who is an anthology. He lived probably about, I think he died about 60, 70 years ago. I think his name was Avram Sofer, or one of the Sofrim. He lived in Yerushalayim, and he wrote an anthology on Shulchan Aruch of different positions. So he says that the Rambam Zal says that Rambam says even though we don't have Melch Sedomus, but you have to worry about other salts that have the same properties. And you could cause blindness. The Rabbeinu Yerucham Kosav no, not the Rabbeinu Yerucham. I don't know who that stands for. Kosav b'shem rid she'afal b'shalach melach chovolito yadam mishum mayim Acharonim. That even if you don't eat salt, you should wash mayim Acharonim. In other words, the reason is only because of Melch Sedomus, and it should only be if you have salt. But even if you don't have salt, you should do it. And then he says, "V'zehu atam ufi apshat." My Melch Sedomus is the reason based on pshat, the based on nigla. Ukvar koasu bekam komos ki kol dibri Chazal hem al pi sod. And in many places it says that Chazal instituted things that were hidden. El shemal bisham osam b'derech pshat kidei l'shakech ozen. They clothed it in explanations that are easily understood in order that people should buy into it. But there's really multiple reasons. The same as like the Gra said. And this is in the Zohar says, Gila Sod Mayim Acharonim. The Zohar is Megala what the reason for Mayim Acharonim is, not in addition to the reason of Melch Sedomus. And the Zohar says, the Basar the Ochel Bar Nosh Vis Aneg is Tzarech L'Mesev Chulka the Tamsis Lahu Sitra. The food that's left over in his fingers, you have to give it over to the Sitra Achra. I have no idea what this means, but it's similar to what by the Sarah Azazel also. It says that you give a share over to the Sitra Achra is the negative evil forces in the world, like the in this week's parsha that Yavik Yishima, the Yaakov had a fight with the Sar Shalesav. So there's negative forces, and you have to give. That's what the Ramban says about the Sarah Azazel. You have to give something to the Satan. Why? I don't know. Uman ihu mayim acharonim hahu zuama didan did starach lemehav lahu sitra chulka did starach le. He needs this portion. Al derech vaday inin choven, and it certainly is a chova. Okay, then on the bottom of the page, we have in the library in the office we have a Rabbi Yosef. His son wrote a collection of Rabbi Yosef's psakim, and Rabbi Yosef he passed in Mayim Acharonim chova. If you came late, I said that I'm going to try to sell to everybody the idea that it's important to wash Mayim Acharonim because most of the poskim say that there's a chiyuv to wash Mayim Acharonim, and that it's also al pi nigla and al pi kabbalah, and it's also it's healthier to wash Mayim Acharonim. So Rabbi Yosef, who had complete mastery, every time I learn his farm, I am just awed how much he knew. And I have something from Rabbi Yosef. I don't know if we get to it tonight, but he simply says, he doesn't quote the two opinions in the Shulchan Aruch. He just says the Mayim Acharonim is a chova. There's a beautiful sefer called Pele Yoetz. Pele Yoetz was written by Rabbi Lazar Papo. He was a posek and also a Mekubal. He lived in Constantinople. He wrote the sefer was published in 1824. It's a Musar sefer, and he has tremendous insight into human nature. It's worth learning the Paleo. So, but he writes there as far as Mayim Acharonim, he says V'yesh. It's in alphabetical order. He has topics that are divided according to the alphabet. So in the letter Nun, he has an Netilas Yadayim. He says V'yesh Netilas Acher Shu Yosech Chiyuvis. There's another washing that is even a greater chiyuv than the washing at the beginning of the meal. The Haino Netilas Mayim Acharonim. Shehu Chova Ad Shem L'Machna Yotzei L'Melchama Patrim Netilas Mayim Rishonim V'Chivu B'Netilas Mayim Acharonim. The soldiers that went to war, Chazal said they don't have to wash Mayim Rishonim, but Mayim Acharonim, because the Chamir Mishum Chamir Sakanta, because of the Sakana, they said they didn't absolve them from washing Mayim Acharonim. The Afghan Bisman Azeh Afil the Goshiach Mel Sedomis, and even nowadays that we don't have, it's not common to have Mel Sedomis. Lekas Sakanta, and there's no Sakana. V'komakol Chiyuv Rami Long Kaim Divi Chachamim. There's a chiyuv to fulfill the words of Chachamim. So look at what he says. Im eino misame ene basar. If a person doesn't wash Mayim Acharonim, albeit now that we don't have Mel Sedomis, the physical eyes will not become blinded, but ene hasecho misame ene hasecho v'nefesh. If you don't wash Mayim Acharonim, it causes you to be spiritually blind. Your nefesh and your seichel will be blinded. Shekol divreihem rosha magia hashemayma yisodem rabbanisa. Where does it say that magia hashemayma? In this week's parsha, past week's parsha. Sulam utzavartza rosha magia hashemayma. So he says there's the same idea as the Vilna Gaon, that there's al pisayid, there's other reasons, and he says if a person ignores Mayim Acharonim, it will lead to the person in a spiritual sense, the person will be blinded. And he says, and most people are not careful with Mayim Acharonim. They note the Mayim Acharonim el ba'ochem al shulchan b'cheres b'nei bayis. There are people that when they have a suda with other people, then they wash Mayim Acharonim. But if a person is by himself in his store or he's traveling, ain't choshishim. They don't wash Mayim Acharonim. V'averu hu biyadam. He says it's an avera. Again, even though the Shulchan Aruch says that there are those that are mekel, but it's over and over again. You see how strong all the poskim are. So he says it's an avera. For ish hayarei, a person who has Yireh Shamayim, yir bechanuso o b'lach v'darach kli muchal lito, he should have a special Mayim Acharonim vessel. Ukli l'kama mayim. And you're supposed to pour the Mayim Acharonim also into a special kli. Shemayim Acharonim ein notim el bekli. V'zei notim mikol ra. And by doing that, a person will be saved from all evil. So there's plenty of, besides the obligatory element, there's a lot of brachos that are associated with washing Mayim Acharonim.
What's the shear on how much you have to?
The shear is, excellent question. The shear is that you're supposed to wash to the second knuckle, and the Mishnah Berurah makes fun of people that they pour a drop of water on the edge of their fingernails. It should be enough water that it could clean the ends of the finger. The thumb only has one knuckle, but the other fingers, it's the second knuckle, or not the second, whatever. Yeah, it's the second knuckle.
And the Jimmy says about the lech koladarach. What happens if you're in a situation where you buy a sandwich at a store, you wash before you go, and then you get in the car,
if you
drive 150 miles, if you wait till the next point, which you can stop and pour.
So it's a very good question, because I would have said that in such a situation you could rely on the mekilim, but the problem is once you start washing Mayim Acharonim, if you don't say that you're doing bli neder, it becomes a neder, and if it's a neder, then even though it could be it's a deraisa. So now that by Netilas Yadayim, it says if you can't get water unless you walk Dal Milim, which is the distance of about 72 minutes, you don't have to wash Netilas Yadayim. You cover your hands with a bag instead, or with a cloth. So it could be that the Mayim Acharonim would be the same thing. That if you can't, or that's built into the halacha. I don't know. It's a good question.
I mean, that's my simple yom. I can always wash my Rishonim because I just wash before I get in the car.
Well, but there's always gas stations. You just go in and you buy a bottle of water.
If you're on, like traffic on the turnpike or
Oh, okay. All right. So
on the
then
George Washington
that's
Bridge.
why it says Chachamenu Birosha. You plan.
keep a bottle in
You
your
plan.
It's hard to watch. It's not even like I will stop theoretically, but here I am stuck in a 2-hour
I hear. That's
traffic
a,
jam on the George Washington Bridge.
I hear.
can't actually
That's a good
walk.
question. And you're not supposed to pour the water on the floor. So okay, that's a good question. Yeah.
That's why I travel in an RV.
Ah, that's the solution. And now we know why you have an RV. Just like there's reasons for Chazal, secret reasons. So now we know Bob's secret reason for having an
We're not going to ask
RV.
you if you have an Atilas Yadayim cup in the RV.
Rabbi, and it's just one?
Just one time. Yeah, you don't need 3 times.
Why is this shear so much different than the Tilos Yadayim?
For Rishonim.
Because Netilas Yadayim has to do with the because the Kohanim used to wash their hands from the kiyar, and there was a shear of revius for that. Here, the purpose is to clean the hands. It's just either to take away the melech sodomus, or if they or the zuama, which the hands are dirty, which the Mekubalim say is bad for the person.
But
But
what
it-
about, okay, but what about just having those things that give you
Wipes. Oh,
give you
that's a
wipes?
good question. A very
Is
good
that
question.
not just as good or better?
I saw somebody discuss that. I don't remember who. If I remember when I come home, I'll see if I can
It's probably
find.
tied to the reason. If you say you're doing it because your hands are dirty, then your hands won't be dirty.
mean,
So
doing
if
most
you're
is
getting
fine,
into the
right?
Kabbalah, then I would. And it,
Well,
I,
the Kabbalah.
yeah, but that's also that.
Maybe you should do both. Maybe you should do both.
Well, who says it's Aaron
No, he-
Bekli?
no,
The
that's
the
what-
left with there Bekli.
Yeah, but in the Shulchan it says Marachon Milton Al Gabe Karka El Bekli. You got to eat nothing because
You're supposed to pour. You're not supposed to pour on the floor because the ruach ra.
So
Yeah.
why, not that I'm
Right here.
gonna care
That's-
about it, but why isn't that the 3
Well,
times?
the
Once you said it's
answer
Ruach Ra involved, why isn't it 3 times then?
You know, it'll be clear.
Or is it only
Right,
Ruach
and
Ra
only
after?
have a
why
kid.
The
isn't it-
ruach
Can't stick
ra
your hand on
comes
the sink
from
either. That's
the
not gonna work.
zuama, from the dirty hands. So that ruach ra. I mean, you can't compare one ruach ra to another. I don't know. All the ruach ras are
I won't compare them.
different.
Doesn't the Mishmarot say elsewhere that for Mayim Rishonim, if you should make sure you should put enough water to, because that's also segula for Ashiros.
It's supposed to be l'chatchila. It should be up to your wrist.
But he also mentions a segula for Ashiros.
I don't recall, but all right. The only time that
you got at the beginning, and
only
at the end,
time
you
you-
got Parnas at the end, you got
only-
the Ashiros at the beginning,
in the middle.
and a benching in the middle.
right.
That's it.
Okay. All right, look at the bottom of the page. The Birkei Yosef, who was Rav Yosef Chaim Azulai. And I told you a few times, he traveled throughout Europe. He was a super genius, and he visited libraries, and he memorized Svarim, and he quotes many manuscripts that we don't have anymore. So he says, Kosav Mar Ziknenu Harav HaChosid Mahara Azulai. I don't know who that is, but he says, "Ba'gosav kifi hakabal tzarich lizar behem ma'od ve'ein lahakol behem." You should not be mekel Mayim Acharonim. But mekel Mayim Acharonim mekil lo yamav ushnosav. If a person is mekel Mayim Acharonim, so God doesn't give a person a long life. Kach heshivo min hashemayim ayidei Sheeilos chalom migusios harav haMordechai. That's what the nephew of the Mordechai, who was one of the Rishonim, Agiso. Agiso is a nephew. A brother-in-law. So brother-in-law of the Mordechai. So he's quoting the Sefer Sheeilos Uteshuvos from the Shemayim. So now let's look at this Sefer. I didn't read to you
The Mordechai had the dream, and it was just transmitted from the Mordechai.
No, he's just telling you who the author of the Sefer was. I forgot to read to you the Shalah in the middle of the page. The Shalah says, "V'atam banai." I always forget what that stands for. Zuki would know. Yud Tzach Vav, but he's not here.
He's there.
He's there. Oh, he's here.
He's on the phone, I hope.
Oh, okay.
Are you there?
Are you there, Zuki?
Yes,
What does it stand for? Yud Tzaddik Vav. You told me
I
if you.
never remember the tzaddik.
Oh, you don't remember either. All right. It's something. It's a bracha. Hizar b'mayim acharonim v'af shekasvu Tosfos or Rosh Mordechai v'sof perek el dvarim she'idna ein olam nogim behem. Even though Tosfos says that nowadays the minhag is not to wash, al tashkiach b'divreim b'zeh. The Shalah Hakadosh says don't pay attention to the Tosfos. Ki ilu roes hazohar binyan azel kasu mashikasvu. Since the Zohar says, and he quotes the Zohar earlier on, and I showed it to you. The Kaf HaChaim quotes the Zohar. He says if the Beis Yosef would have seen the Zohar, if Tosfos would have seen the Zohar, he would not have said that you don't have to wash Mayim Acharonim. That's a big chiddush because I mean the Zohar did not become public until much later than Tosfos in the 1300s, and I don't know if the Tosfos.
So how could he have seen it?
That's what he's saying. He didn't see it, but if he would have seen it, he would have had.
Had he been able to see it?
Had he been able, yeah, he would have. I mean, there were different opinions among the poskim about Kabbalah. Not everybody felt that we should be following what the Mekubalim say. But once the Beis Yosef, the Beis Yosef constantly quotes from the Zohar and from the Mekubalim, so that became more or less standard. So, but then he says that even Tosfos would not have been Mekel. It's a strong statement. The Shalokas make such a statement. So now let me show you this Sheeilos Uteshuvos from the Shemayim. This sefer was written. His name was Rav Yaakov. I forgot from what city he was. Rav Yaakov from someplace, and so he. This is a fascinating sefer, and I'm going to talk about it later tonight. It was Rav Yaakov Marvish, someplace I guess in Germany. So he went. I don't have a copy of the sefer. I would have brought it in. Maybe before next week I could find it someplace and buy it. But he maybe get it on I have my daughter get it from Amazon. So he says. He has a whole sefer of tshuvas that he went to sleep and he asked questions and then the Rebbeinu Shalom or a Malach answered the questions and he transcribed it in the morning. He has, for example, he asked about the tefillin of Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. He says it's a big machlokas. Rashi says the order of the parashas is one way, Rabbeinu Tam says the order is the other way. I don't remember he has a response there. I don't remember what his response was. So he says, "Oh, nistapaknu." He said that he told the Malach that we were not certain about Mayim Acharonim. Some say that we're not concerned about the hands being clean. Because that's what one of the reasons Tosfos says that we're not makbid on. In order, the proper way to wash Mayim Acharonim is by anointing with oil afterwards, because then it makes the hands. Like if you're fastidious, then it makes you.
Soap work?
What?
Does soap work?
Does
soap?
I don't know. No, I think the shemen is not to clean it. The shemen is to soften the skin. I don't know. So, but he says even though the Rishonim say
Kills the coronavirus.
Even though the Rishonim say that we're not chayshish from Mayim Acharonim, but nonetheless the Rav Yaakov, who was one of the Baalei Tosfos, says al zeh sha'alti im yesh mamish v'divrei elav. What does the Rebbeinu Shalom hold? The Yeshivo mi zeh amar vatei Hashem lo tziva. Who is it that said that it should become? And if God did not command that, Mayim Rishonim v'Acharonim davar shebikdusha. It's important for. It inculcates kedusha. V'chol davar shebekdusha hamekel bo mekilim bo lo yam ushnosov. Kach yeshiva bemis. That's what the Birkei Yosef quoted as well. That somebody's mekel with Mayim Acharonim, then the Rebbeinu Shalom is mekel with his health and the years of his life. And then, if you look at the next page, Sefer Charedim, who was written in some place around the end of the 16th century. It was written by, I wrote the name, it got chopped off here. I don't remember who it was.
The Kaf HaChaim?
No, the Sefer Charedim. But he lived in Tzfas. Sefer Charedim was like a Sefer HaMitzvahs. So he says, Mayim Acharonim chova v'davar shebekdushahem v'hamekel behem mekilim yan v'shlosov kach yeshiv nishma yidei sheos chalom migusah shel Rav Mordechai. So he quotes the same thing. He quotes the Sheeilos Uteshuvos and Shemayim, and he quotes the Zohar. And then there's a sefer called Kaf HaChaim that before I showed you Kaf HaChaim was written by Avram Sofer. This is a Kaf HaChaim that was written by Rav Chaim Falagi, who was a big posek and mekubal in Turkey, He lived from 1788 to 1868. He wrote probably around 100 Sfarim. He's very prolific. So he says, Yecharat ha'ish hakari b'sefer charedim. This Sefer Charedim was written about 200 years before him. He says, a person should tremble after reading what it says in the Sefer Charedim, which the word chared means to tremble. The people that tremble. The Shiva b'chalom nishamayim, the make of Mayim Acharonim v'kin lo yom of bar minan. So he quotes the same thing, that one should be, and then he quotes in the parentheses, v'chein hevi abirki Yosef, u'v'zachar Avraham, u'v'chesel alafim, u'v'sefer Pesach hadavir. So there you have the preponderance. I also had from Rabbi, I forgot to put it in here. Rabbi Yasher said you should wash my Acharonim. So I strongly would recommend, for all the reasons that we saw here, that one should wash my Acharonim.
It's not good enough to do it only on Shabbos, right?
No, that's what he said. That there's some people that only do it when they're with the chaverim, but not. It's.
If you
I'm
really
telling
don't
you,
wanna do it, then stop eating bread. That's
it's
my
not.
approach.
It's not hard to do.
It's
That's.
mitzvah to eat bread. You can
Yeah, the
It's-
truth is, I don't understand the whole.
Why is it only eat bread?
There's no, anytime you eat salt, it should be.
Oh, you're asking an
Pretzels.
excellent question. If it's because of Malsadomas, so why was it? And because of Yidayim Mezulamos, so why is it limited to bread? I thought of that question also last night. I have to see if I can find the
They used
answer.
to dip their bread into salt.
Yeah, they used to, but there are other foods that are salt. If you, let's say you eat chicken soup and it's salt, okay, chicken soup you don't eat with your fingers.
You have to dip
Pretzel.
other food.
Pretzels,
into
yeah.
salt.
What happens
What's
if?
the difference?
Yeah, okay, I don't know. It's a good question. Okay, so now I want to show you. We only have a few minutes, but I'll go to get into it more next week. What is the status with this sefer Sheeilos Uteshuvos min Shemayim? Is this a sefer that we treat with authenticity? That this is the only place where we have a whole sefer devoted to responses that came from Shemayim. So, if the author wasn't who he was, if he wasn't one of the Bali Tosis, so we would dismiss it. We would say he had chalomas, but he had dreams.
Labat Shemayim he.
Ah, now you're asking a terrific question.
Also, divrei chalamas lo mahalim lo moridim.
Yeah, the Gemara says you don't pay any attention to chalomas, but Bob is asking that the Gemara says the Torah is Labat Shemayim, that we don't care what the Rebbeinu Shalom says. So why should we be concerned? Why should we care? What the Rebbeinu Shalom responded to the Sefer, to the Rav Yaakov, should be irrelevant to us, because Torah Lav Ba'Shamayim. So this is Rav Avad Yosef has about 30 pages about this question, about this Sefer Sheeilos Uteshuvos min Shemayim, and he just about this topic, whether it's authentic. Whether do we say Torah Lav Shemayim, or do we say that it's a something that it has authenticity? And every time I learn Rav Yosef's Sfarim, I'm just amazed, because he has mastery over. I don't know how a human being could do it. Maybe he was a malach. He knows so many Sfarim. So this tshuva that he wrote in the Abiyah Omer, he has like 3 tshuvas, Mem, Memalef, Mebe. I just did some extracts, and then in the 5th chaylik he has more tshuvas about it. If you look at the last page, I wanted to know how old was he when he wrote this tshuva. This was the first volume of Abiyah Omer. The Abiyah Omer, we have, I think, 12 volumes now, but this was the first volume. How old was he when he printed the first volume of the Abiyah Omer? Because the amount, just this tshuva alone, if you would count up all the Sfarim that he quotes, there's probably around 300-400 Sfarim that he quotes between all the pages of So I found in the front page there's a haskama from Rav Yitzchak Isaac Levi Herzog, who was the first chief rabbi of Israel. So if you look on page 10, I did a little detective work. So he wrote a haskama for the sefer. This was when the sefer first appeared. If you look what he writes, he says, "Emes nitla le'yomer sheyantu b'sefer chadash harav hagon hacharav ubakis sini v'akaharim yari Hashem miram Rav Yosef Sheeilos Uteshuvos v'chidusha Torah shelo matzu chen b'ani." His chidushim I found favored by me. Ki hu halach u'meishar b'bikiyas atzuma uv'avanim. He said he had tremendous bikiyas. V'advarim semechem v'yirim ki hu holef v'dolo b'neihem mi'amkei atarsenek dosha. Anyway, the reason why I put this here is because it's Tafshin Yadalad, which according to my calculations is 1954. So, and he was born in 1920. So he was 34 when he wrote this tshuva, and it's a and the reason why he wrote such a long tshuva is the topic that he was dealing with is this was a lifelong campaign that he had to Lahachzir Torah Liyoshna, that he wanted that the minig of the Sfardim should be to follow the Beis Yosef, and over the centuries, there were poskim that were Sephardic poskim that had other opinions. For primarily the Ben Ish Chai, who was the Rav in Baghdad in the late 1800s, he disagreed with the Beis Yosef on a lot of things, and he established the minhagim for the Sephardic Jews in that part of the world, and then the Birkei Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Chaim David Azulai, who was also Sephardi, and he also sometimes deviated from the Beis Yosef. So on this, what he's writing about here is the question whether, this is a big famous question, does a woman make a bracha on a mitzvah esei shezman grama, a mitzvah that she's not obligated to do, like netilas lulav? If she wants to shake the lulav, she could, because there's mitzvah also, any mitzvah also. She could do it as an ein mitzvah also. But does she make a bracha on netilas lulav? So that's a big machlokas rishonim. Rashi and Tosfos and then the Bali Tosfos and I think the Rosh probably, they all say that a woman could make a bracha, because once she's doing it, even though she's ein mitzvah yosa, she can make a bracha. And when it says v'tzivano, it doesn't mean that God commanded me, but it means He commanded in general for the men. But the Rambam held that there's no bracha. So the Beis Yosef pasking like the Rambam, that if a woman, any mitzvah that she's not obligated to do, she could do it, but she doesn't make a bracha. But the Birkei Yosef, in who was, his acronym is Chida, the Birkei Yosef advocated that she should make a bracha, and based on a tshuva in this sefer of Sheeilos Uteshuvos Min Mayim, where he says that you would make a bracha, and that a woman should make a bracha. So that is what the whole tshuva, like 30 pages of Rabbi Yosef, that he wants to show that the minig of the Sfardim should be following the Beis Yosef and not any other position. I see I forgot to copy the simon in the sefer where he says that, but he says they should be, and they should not. He says they should not follow the Chidah, and they shouldn't follow the Sheeilos Uteshuvos Min Mayim, and then he has pages and pages. He has to. If it's Sheeilos Uteshuvos Min Mayim, so you would say, I mean, we can't disagree with Sheeilos Uteshuvos Min Mayim. This is what God Himself said. So how could we disagree? So he analyzed that in great depth, whether or not you should be following Sheeilos Uteshuvos Min Mayim. So we have only about 10 minutes. I'm just going to start the topic for you. The basis for the question is what the Bob and a few of you said before, is how does the Sefer Sheeilos Uteshuvos Min Mayim, why do we care what the Rebbeinu Shalom thought? There's the famous Gemara. It's on page 9. The Gemara tells the story of the Tanur Shel Achnoi. An Achnoi is a snake. So the Gemara says, why do they call the Tanur Shel Achnoi? Amar Rav Huda Amar Shmuel Shehikifu Devarim Ka'achna Zu V'Tamaso, because they surrounded this Tanur. It was a tremendous machlokas among the Chachamim whether this type of Tanur becomes Tamei or not. So Tana Ba'osa Hayom Heishiv Rabbi Lazar Kol Tshuva Sheba'olam V'lo Kibul Himenu. Rabbi Lazar brought all sorts of rayas that the Tanur is not Tamei. Look at the Rashi. Rashi says on the left, Aidei Maisa Sheira Nishal Halachzu Beis Medrash. It became something happened to somebody's oven, and they came with the Shabbos Beis Medrash. And Nafal Tumo La'aver Tanazeh, that there was something Tamei was in the airspace of the Tanner, and it should become Tamei Ba'oel. V'chazur v'nasul agaba of Taras v'tiyam Rabbi Lazar. So Rabbi Lazar said that the Tanner is not Tamei, and that anything that touched the Tanner is Tahar. And his contemporaries disagreed with Rabbi Lazar, and they took all those taharos and they burned them in his presence. So this was a very big machlokas that took place. And the Yom Heshiv Rabbi Lazar called Shuva Shabbat. This is a famous Gemara, you know the Gemara. The Chacham didn't agree to any of his arguments. If the halach is like me, then this boxer carob tree should prove that I'm correct. Neker charov mim komo me ama. The box, you see the godless of the Tanaim, that they're able to do such a thing, to make mamish nisim. The Lazar said the charov is going to prove my point. The Charuv moved 100 amos. 100 amos is approximately 300 feet. Some said it was 400 amos, so that's like 1,200 feet. So what did the Chacham is football field? What did the Chacham say? Yeah, you can't prove from a Charuv. Where's the Charuv? No. He said, okay, the halach like me, the stream will prove my point. Chazer amasamayim la'achareim. So the river, which normally flows downstream, turned around, flowed the opposite direction. Amrullah mivin rayim amasamayim. You can't prove anything from a river. Chazer amrulahemim halacha kamosi kosei beis hamedrash yachichu. Now he's getting, okay, the trees, what do the trees know? But the beis medrash, the walls of the beis medrash are going to prove the point. He took kosei beis hamedrash lipo. So the walls of the Beis Medrash were about to fall down. They were like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Gar b'hem Rabbi Yeshua. Amar lehem im talmid echavim menatzim zeh zeh b'halacha atema tivchem. If the Chachamim are having a machokas, who asked you to get involved? So lo naflu mibnei kvodesh Rabbi Yeshua. So because of Yeshua, they would have fallen because of Rabbi Lazar said they should fall. But so they didn't fall because Rabbi Yeshua interceded. But they were both, they were like giants. So the wall didn't know what to do, so it stayed in the middle someplace. Slightly slanted. And it's still slanted to this very day. So he says, okay, you don't want to accept the boxer tree, the chruv, and you don't want to accept the kosei beis hamedrash, and you don't want to accept the amos hamayim. But the Rebbeinu Shalom should make a declaration. The Baskal said, "What are you starting over Rebbe Lazar? The halachic Rebbe Lazar are all over. Wherever Amar Rabbi Yeshua, Aragav Amar Lo b'Shamayim." So Rabbi Yeshua stood on his feet. He said, "There's a pasuk. Where is Lo b'Shamayim? It's in Devarim someplace. Yeah, I don't remember where. Yeah, where? Oh, it's in Nitzavim, the end of Nitzavim. So my Lo b'Shamayim. Amar, what does it mean? It's not b'Shamayim. Amar Yirmiyah Shekvar Nitna Torah Mehar Sinai. The Torah was already given to Klal Yisrael. Ein ana mashkichem bebaskol. Shekvar kosafta behar Sinai v'Torah achri ram lahatos. In the Torah it says achri ram lahatos, and that's what we do. It doesn't. The Rebbeinu Shalom relinquished his authority. Rav Nosson, Ashke Rav Nosson le'Eliyahu. Rav Nosson found Eliyahu. Navi Amalei Mai Avikucha B'Richa V'Hu Shaita. He said, "What's God doing now?" Amalei Kochayach V'Amar Nitzchuni Banai. He said he was laughing. He was happy. My children beat me. Amro also Ayom have you called Tarish Shiratir or Belazar V'Sarfim Be'esh. They went ahead and they burnt all the things that he was mitar. They since the halacha they passing was it's not tar. So this is a famous klal, the Torah of Shemaimi. The Ran says in his sefer Well, how could that be? God is the one that gave us the Torah. So how could it be that Torah Rabbi Shemayim? If God is telling you that this is what I said, this is what it was a question of how to interpret the Torah. That was the Machlokas of Rabbi Elazar and the Chachamim. So if God says that Rabbi Elazar had the correct understanding, and when the Torah was given on Har Sinai, that's what the Rebbeinu Shalom told Moshe Rabbeinu. So then, how could it be the Torah Rabbi Shemayim? So the Ran says that is Torah.
It is Torah.
The Rebbeinu Shalom says that whatever the Chachamim say, that becomes Torah. The Torah, it's not an objective in the sense that it's whatever God told Moshe. It changes. At the time of Kabbalah Torah, maybe the Rebbeinu Shalom said one way, but then later on, since the Chachamim had a different understanding, so that becomes Torah, and therefore that becomes the absolute halacha, because Torah is Rabbi Shemayim.
It's interesting, the conclusion of the Gemara is from Eliyahu Navi.
What?
The conclusion of the Gemara
Is it Eliyahu Navi?
It's from Eliyahu Navi. Lo b'shamayim he the din.
Well, because he's
right?
not. They weren't quoting Eliyahu Navi to prove the point that the halacha is like.
But according to prove that lo b'shamayim he is
No, there was.
acceptable.
It supported the fact that it's Rabbi Shemayim, but the Chachamim paskin already the Rabbi Shemayim. This is a fundamental principle that Torah is Rabbi Shemayim. So the big question is, if that's the case, the Torah Rabbi Shemayim, so then what you see the Chachamim, they didn't care about all these signs from heaven, these heavenly signs, they ignored them. So how come this sefer, which is written by one of the Balei Tosas, Sheeilos and Mishamayim, how could he weigh in on all these Sheeilos? It's Torah Rabbi Shemayim. So what difference does it make what the Shemayim says? It's irrelevant. If Torah
It helped crystallize his thought process, and he came to the
Who says
conclusion
from
properly.
Shemayim?
Maybe it was only on.
who says it's from Shemayim, we're assuming that he's
No,
authentic.
like Harvey just said, he
That what?
he went to sleep and
And
I thought of it in the
helped him
morning.
figure it out.
Oh, it helped him figure out. So why is it, but he said that he
said he heard it
said he heard it from the
And
Shemayim.
a chalom from Shemayim.
You're saying that the Shemayim helped.
Inner,
What?
his inner self.
Afkas Rochel or something.
Afkas Rachel is the Beis Yosef had a Magid, but the Afkas Rachel is not a halacha sefer.
It's just that said he wrote the Shulchan Aruch that way with a malach.
It wasn't.
Figure it out.
It wasn't a halacha sefer. The Malach was not. Didn't teach him halacha. Afkas Rachel is more.
No, but just when he wrote the Shulchan Aruch, he had a malach sitting there with him.
But I don't know that he paskined based on what the Malach.
Based on the majority rule.
Yes, followed the principle of Acharonim. Okay, so this is the topic for next week. This is a very fascinating topic, and why did Rabbi Yosef write 30 pages about it? So it's very, very interesting. So we'll come back to that next week. Okay, good night, everybody. Bob.
Let's go. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you.
Good night.
Send us more pictures. Bye bye.
Okay.